going to leave the stage for a few minutes, and I'm going to invite Tim Isgitt and Patrick Butler to come on up. While you're stretching your legs, this next session is called the Spectrum Auction, the first $2 billion. In April, the FCC released the results of its spectrum auction. Dozens of public media licensees earned close to $2 billion in selling their spectrum to wireless companies for their use. How will stations use the money that they earned? What else should we know about the spectrum auction? Sitting next to me, and I'm going to get up and leave you in a minute, Mr. Tim Isgitt, the managing director of the organization Humanity United. Previously, he served as senior vice president for communications and government affairs at the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Hi, Tim. Also, Patrick Butler, the president and chief executive officer, America's Public Television Stations, which represents the majority of the 170 public television station licensees around the country. And on that, I will depart for a few minutes and allow you gentlemen to chat.
Thank you. What a pleasure, actually, to finally meet Corva Coleman today. I'm such a big fan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here and allowing Pat and I to have this brief discussion. I know we're standing between you and the sort of networking break, but I think this is a really important discussion, and it is an honor to be here with Pat Butler, too, and I want to start by saying thank you for your service.
Well, thank you, Tim. Thanks for
your entire career, but most specifically over the last 6.5 years as president and CEO of the American Public Television Stations.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you.
I think perhaps folks know APTS is a membership organization, but I think it's really important to perhaps start this discussion today with the reality that APTS also has a really significant legislative and advocacy mandate, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't start talking about sort of the current environment and the federal appropriation and where that stands right now, Pat.
Okay,
so
sure. Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you for your service also. Tim was a very senior executive at the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for many years, and we fought many battles together and won most of them, and I'm very grateful for your service, and good luck in your new incarnation here. With respect to the federal funding, I think everybody in the room knows that President Trump has proposed to eliminate our federal funding, and we were able to stave off that proposal in the fiscal year 2017 omnibus appropriations bill that passed the Congress a couple of months ago. In fact, the Congress gave us every cent that we had requested, which was good news for us. He has proposed to do away with our funding in fiscal 2018 as well in the comprehensive budget proposal that he submitted to Congress on March the 22nd. And we are hopeful that we're going to have a similarly successful result, but it's much harder now than it has been in the recent past to ensure that funding will continue. Luckily for us, the Republican controlled House of Representatives and the Republican-controlled United States Senate have been very supportive of our work over the last few years during their majorities, and we've been able to maintain level funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting over the last few years, while we are also getting new money, which is a very rare thing in today's budgetary environment, new money to construct our new interconnection system for the public television and radio systems. And so we got $40 million last year, $50 million this year for the new interconnection system, and we hope we're going to get a bit more than that over the next year or two to complete the system. So I want to make clear that we do have broad bipartisan support in the Congress of the United States. What was a mystery to us was the extent to which the president's proposal and his influence would hold sway over his fellow party members in the Congress. We were heartened by the fact that they stood with us in the FY17 appropriations process. We are hopeful that they will stand with us in FY18 and beyond. I have to expect that we're going to get a zero proposal from from this White House for the duration of its administration. I don't know that, and we're not taking that for granted. I'm making every effort with my colleagues to get them to see the light. Vice President Pence is a certified champion of public broadcasting. I presented him a trophy here in Washington in 2014, and he's not the one who gets to make the final decision on this issue, but we are hopeful that we're going to be able to sustain our funding going forward. I do remind people on the Hill that we have always been the beneficiaries of bipartisan support. The first president to propose federal funding for public broadcasting was Dwight Eisenhower in 1958 in the National Defense Education Act, where he proposed to explore the power of television in educating America's young people. That exploration has proven astoundingly successful over the last 60 years, and President Ford was the one who proposed the 2-year advanced funding. He, in fact, proposed a 5-year advanced funding mechanism for public broadcasting to make sure that there was no political influence over our programming decisions. Congress agreed to 2 years, and it has been 2 years now since 1975. So we want to make clear that this is a bipartisan undertaking with bipartisan support, and we are hopeful that we're going to be able to continue to secure this funding.
Thank you, Pat. Perhaps if there's some time at the end of this discussion, we can open it up to some questions. But I know we're supposed to be talking about the Spectrum auction. Right. And speaking of funding, there was a pretty big influx of funding to the public television system, and I was hoping that you could talk to us a little bit about that and what it means both for the individual stations and the entire system.
Well, I will. It was not, first of all, I should say it was not nearly as big as we were hoping it was going to be. The original bidding for the Spectrum in the first round was something over $86 billion, and there were a lot of stations, both public and commercial, who were thinking that this might be quite a good day at the office. As the auction wore on, it came down to about $19 billion as opposed to $86 billion, and so all of our expectations were moderated, and with the $19 billion that finally was cleared in the auction, $10 billion of that is going to go to both commercial and non-commercial broadcasters. $1.75 billion is going to go for the transition fund that Congress authorized to help us with our repacking and other transition issues. $7.3 billion is going to the federal treasury in the interest of deficit reduction, and about $200 million stays at the FCC to cover the cost of the auction itself. Within public broadcasting, we collectively received about $2 billion, a little less than $2 billion, $1.9 billion in the auction. About half of that went to state and university licensees, which have the ability to do anything they want with those proceeds, anything from building a road to building a science building to building a football stadium. It doesn't have to stay in the public media world, and we just don't know how they're intending to invest those funds yet. It's just too early to tell. Within the public television community itself, we wound up with about $1 billion in auction proceeds, and that involved 7 public television stations going off the air altogether, 17 engaged in channel sharing arrangements with other stations in their markets, and 9 public television stations moving from the UHF frequency to the VHF frequency, and getting some money to vacate the UHF spectrum that they had occupied. And 153 of our 350 stations are going to have to be repacked over the next 39 months, and it's going to be a very intensive effort to get all that done in the time frame that Congress has assigned. So it's a much more modest result than we had first thought might be possible with the opening round of the spectrum auctions. $1 billion is not nothing, but it is certainly not enough, for example, to defray the federal investment that we've asked for over the last several years, and so we are still going to need federal help. We're going to need state help. We get about $200 million a year, a little over, in state funding also, not from every state, but from, I think, 36 states. And the partnership we have with people like you and viewers like you and so forth has made for a successful public-private partnership, which our friends on Capitol Hill also appreciate.
Yeah. Pat, are there any plans for a future auction? Any expectation of future funding?
Well, I don't think there'll be, as far as I can see, there's no expectation for another auction of broadcast spectrum. There is a lot of spectrum that the federal government itself holds. The Defense Department, the intelligence agencies, and many other federal departments and agencies hold a considerable amount of spectrum, some of which they obviously need for important national priorities, but some of which they may not need, may not be as efficiently used as it could be. And our friends in Congress are thinking that if there is another spectrum auction, it is likely to be for spectrum that is owned by or is controlled by the federal government itself. And so I don't anticipate we're going to have another broadcast spectrum auction. I don't see one ever, but we'll be very far down the line if another one ever comes.
Okay. I can continue to ask brilliant questions, but perhaps the audience, there's anyone in the audience that has a question for Pat?
Well, I should say, while you're thinking about this, that these public television stations, which did receive some auction proceeds, have committed to reinvesting those proceeds in their own communities. They are building up their endowments, they're building up their program funds, they're building up their infrastructure, and they're finding some new ways to serve their communities. And the system as a whole doesn't get any of this money. It goes to each individual station that was successful in the auction process. And those stations may use the proceeds as they wish, and all of them, as you would expect from public television stations, are reinvesting this money in their community service.
Important distinction. Question right here.
Yes, sir.
John Schwartz with Vocal. The $2 billion is a gross figure. I mean, we know, for example, that KOC in Los Angeles used most of the money it got to buy time on a commercial station to stay on the air. Do you know of cases where the reverse happened, where commercial stations are paying public stations in order to share their frequencies?
Well, I don't think that's quite right about KOCE in terms of giving all of its money to a commercial partner.
More than half of it.
Well, do I know of any non-commercial? I mean, any commercial station that is giving money to a
In order to share what had been
well, yes,
exclusively.
there are 17 stations that are doing exactly that, and the nature of those relationships and partnerships it varies with every one of those stations, but it's not 50-50 in every circumstance, but it's something where there is a revenue sharing agreement between a commercial and a non-commercial station. They are, I don't think there are any circumstances, there may be one or two, where a public television station is sharing a channel with another public television station. So these private these commercial and non-commercial arrangements are the norm. Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Christopherson, the Reed Allen Foundation, and I'll try to project, or here's the thing. Anyway, Pat, would you speak just a little bit more about what you perceive some of the downside will be if the university or state licensees who can choose to use the money in other ways, what kind of loss of services might happen, and just talk a little bit more about the threats?
Right. Well, we have not identified, first of all, any significant loss of viewership, which was the thing we were worried about most in this spectrum auction that was that we would lose an entire state or an entire market or something because the station just decided to go dark, and or a state university or a state government might say, well, we don't want to use the money for that anymore. That hasn't happened, and so the effect on viewership is minimal. There are little pockets of 2,000 viewers here and 4,000 over there, and we think we're going to be able to cover all of those viewers in some other way now. But we're not looking at a mass a white space that we had feared. There isn't much that we can say to states or to universities about how they can spend this money. It has been clear, though, that when they've had these town hall meetings at which these issues have been discussed, people have arisen spontaneously and said, this is very important to us to maintain our public broadcasting service, and we hope you will help us do this. And most of the states and most of the universities have pledged to do exactly that. I don't have anything to report that somebody has just said, I'm taking this money to do something completely different with it. It's just too early to say so far.
I think we have time for one more question. I think Molly's got the mic. Yep, okay.
Hi, I'm Molly DeAguirre with the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation in New Jersey, and I just wanted to sort of tell the room about what's going on in New Jersey, because New Jersey owns four licenses they sold, two for $332 million. And we've been working with our friends at Democracy Fund and others to support Free Press toward trying to take some of that money to benefit community news and information in New Jersey. So they're working through some legislation now to create something called the New Jersey Civic Information Consortium, which is a coalition of universities in New Jersey plus others to hopefully take $100 million of that money that comes back into New Jersey to support community news and information in New Jersey. And I'm wondering if there are other sort of similar efforts like that around the country with other.
Yeah, there are talks along those lines. Yes, I can't report any that is as far along as the New Jersey conversation, but a lot of people are talking about doing exactly the same kind of thing.
Tom, did you have a question as well? No. Okay. Okay, great. Pat, just maybe in the last few minutes here, this is a room of people, of funders who care deeply about media and public media. In this space, in this time that we're in right now, what is your charge to this room? What can we do, beyond sort of our normal activities to help secure this federal appropriation to support the public broadcasting system?
Well, I mean, your normal activities are very important to begin with. We couldn't do this work without the people in this room, and I want to thank you on behalf of everybody in our public television system, and I'm sure Tom and his colleagues at NPR would say the same thing about the generosity of your investments in what we are doing. In addition to the very obvious things about calling your congressmen and your senators and urging them to understand the importance of public media in this country and the importance of the federal investment in public media, I would also encourage you to link with some of the previous conversations, to think not only about supporting the national programming, which many of you have done so generously over the years. Ken Burns, for example, I was with him last night. He's doing an 18-hour history of the Vietnam War that's going to be on PBS starting in September, and it is the most fantastic work I think Ken has ever done, and that's great. And the work we do in children's programming and so forth continues and produces great benefits. But at the local level, our stations produce almost 200 local weekly or daily series that have to do with local public affairs, local history, local culture, and that is the bread and butter of why people on Capitol Hill, people in the state capitals tend to invest in our work. They love the fact that we are doing this kind of coverage, that we are explaining America to itself, that we are so deeply involved in our communities, and to the extent that you may be helpful in supporting these kinds of local efforts, which don't get a lot of headlines and attention and so forth, but are the bedrock of our support on Capitol Hill. That's a big thing that a group like this can do. We were heartened also by the fact that sometime in the last few months, media impact funders produced this study that said the philanthropic world grants about $1 billion a year to worthy media enterprises, and that has gotten the attention of my constituents in public television. Joyce McDonald and I are partners in the Grant Center for Public Media, and we are using that headline as a way to get people interested in the Grant Center and using those resources to leverage what they're doing at the local level. We do education, we do public safety, we do civic leadership. We treat our viewers as citizens rather than consumers, and the work that we're doing at the local level as well as at the national level is, I think, providing a civilizing influence on our country at a time when we need it most.
Thank you, Pat. That's terrific. And as from someone who spent almost 8 years running around the Hill asking for the federal appropriation, people don't realize what a job it is. And so I just want to thank you for everything that you're doing and for public media.
And thank all of you. We were very grateful. Thank you.
I think we're headed into a break now, Ben. Is that right? Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Pat. What do they say? $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Pretty soon you get some real money. And so we really appreciate having the nuanced understanding of these things. Pat, of course, we know that this is your daily work, but we also can peer into your CVs and resumes, folks in our network, and see that someone like Tim is not only a highly placed individual in philanthropy, but has that experience at CPB to draw from, to have these kind of conversations. We really love to be able to draw the knowledge from our network, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this morning, guys.